Hello, students, and welcome. Today we are going to talk about a word you hear all the time, democracy. But have you ever stopped to think about what it really means? We're going to look beyond the usual definitions and try to understand its deeper meaning in our lives.
So, let's begin with a small question for all of you. When I say the word democracy, what is the first picture that comes into your mind? Maybe it's about voting, or leaders, political parties, perhaps? Just think about that for a second.
Now, for most of us, the first thing we think of is the government and voting. And yes, that's a very big part of it, of course. But the real idea of democracy, well, it's actually much bigger and a lot more personal than we might realize.
Okay, so here's our plan for today. First, we'll see that democracy is more than just voting. Then, we'll look at it as a principle for making decisions. We will also compare representative and direct democracy, think about democracy as an ideal, and finally, we will talk about the most important part, the role of an active citizen. So, let's start with our first topic. We're going to look beyond the government. Let's try and see how this basic idea of democracy, this idea of making decisions together, can apply in places you might not even think about.
If you strip everything else away, at its very core, democracy is just a method for taking decisions. It's really just about how any group of people, any group at all, can come together and decide something collectively.
All right, now let's see how this principle actually works in our daily lives. You might be a little surprised to find out that you are probably practicing democracy quite often, maybe without even realizing it.
So what makes a decision democratic? Well, it needs two very important things. First, consultation. And second, the consent of all the people who are affected by that decision. To put it very simply, it means that everyone who is affected gets to have a say.
Just look at this quote. We are a very democratic family. Whenever a decision has to be taken, we all sit down and arrive at a consensus. My opinion matters as much as my father's. See? This is a wonderful example of democracy right inside a family. It's not about who is more powerful. It's about every opinion having the same value. And this idea can be applied in so many other parts of life. For example, a classroom where students are not afraid to speak up and ask questions. Or a political party where the leader doesn't take all the decisions alone. Any organization, really, where the powerful people and the less powerful people have the same say, that is the democratic principle in action.
Okay, so now that we understand this basic principle, let's look at the two main ways it is used in a society. We're going to talk about representative democracy versus direct democracy.
Now just try to imagine getting every single person in a country as large as ours to sit together to take one decision. It's just not possible, is it? And even if it was, most of us don't have the time or maybe even the skills needed for every single important decision.
And that is exactly why most countries today have what is called a representative democracy. It's the most common form we see. In this system, the majority of people rule through their elected representatives. These are the people we choose to take decisions for all of us.
So let's compare them. On one hand, you have representative democracy, where the majority rules through elected representatives. This is what's needed for big modern countries. On the other hand, you have direct democracy. This is where all the people can sit together and take decisions directly. Now, this is only really possible in very small communities. A good example is the Gram Sahaba in a village, where everyone can come and participate.
All right, now let's change our way of thinking for a moment. You see, sometimes democracy is not just about what a government is, but also about what it should be. It can be seen as an ideal, a very high standard that we must always try to achieve.
Think about this quote. It says, "True democracy will come to this country only when no one goes hungry to bed." This is such a powerful thought. It reminds us that the ideal of democracy goes far beyond just voting. It is also about values like justice and equality, and making sure every single person is cared for. So, why is this ideal so important to remember? Well, because it gives us something to measure against. It helps us to judge our own democracy and see its weaknesses. It helps us understand the difference between a minimal democracy, which just has elections, and a good democracy, which also looks after the well-being of its people.
And this leads us to a very important point. Because we are always aiming for this ideal, it means that no country in the world is a perfect democracy, not one. Every democracy is always a work in progress, always trying to become better and fairer.
This brings us to our final and, I think, most important topic today. After all this discussion, the real question is, what is our role in this? Because in the end, democracy depends on you and on me. It depends on all of us.
You see, in some other forms of government, citizens are just expected to follow the rules. But a democracy is different.
It depends on the active political participation of all its citizens. Its very survival depends on it.
And here's the most important thing to remember. The fate of the country does not depend only on what the rulers do. It depends mainly on what we, as citizens, do. It is our actions and our voices that give real strength to a democracy.
So, I will leave you with one final question to think about. The question for all of us is this: what will you do in your own family, in your classroom, in your society to help keep democracy alive and meaningful? Thank you.